Bridging the Gap: Connecting Capabilities and the Supplemental Poverty Measurement by Mason Greist and Bailey Brilley. Poverty is prevalent in America. Regardless of the source one uses, the number of people in poverty in the U.S. well exceeds 10% of the population. We define poverty as a restriction on a person's capability to achieve a dignified human life. Though this is an abstract definition, we believe that it is the best one because it takes into account a person's level of well-being and feeling of self-importance. In measuring poverty, however, we believe that the SPM, or Supplemental Poverty Measure, is the best tool we have because it allows us to address concerns over those in poverty because of financial shortcomings. Some important minds in the study of poverty have suggested the use of capabilities to define poverty. Specifically, Amartya Sen defines poverty as capability failure of an individual. In order to understand this definition, we must define capabilities. Sen's definition of a capability is someone's ability to do valuable acts or achieve valuable states of being. It is defined not as actual achievement of an individual, but his or her potential to be or do. This is the best way to define poverty. Margaret Nussbaum has created a list of 10 capabilities that she determines essential to lead a dignified human life. We found that all of these capabilities are necessary, and also that the U.S. government provides many of these capabilities. So then, if we define poverty by the capabilities of an individual, do we measure it that way too? We think not. Poverty cannot be measured based on capabilities because of something we have defined as accidents of life. For instance, one of the requirements in Nussbaum's capability of life is the ability to not die prematurely. However, we find it hard to consider a person who leads a successful life and then dies suddenly of cancer poor. The capabilities approach is also too abstract, and thus it is virtually impossible to put a numerical value on how much capability a person requires. Furthermore, as said earlier, the United States makes provisions for most of the capabilities, such as providing education and fulfilling the capability for practical reason, as well as senses, imagination, and thought. The way that our government determines poverty currently is the OPM, or Official Poverty Measure. The OPM was established in 1963 by Social Security employee Molly Orshansky. Orshansky determined that the average family of 3 or more spent 1/3 of its after-tax income on food. She thus multiplied this number by 3 to determine the official threshold for poverty. The OPM measures someone's income as his or her pre-taxed income without including his or her benefits, whether near cash or in kind, or non-discretionary expenses, such as childcare or transit costs relating to work. There are several problems with Orshansky's measurement. The first is that it is an absolute measurement, and thus cannot account for the depth of poverty. For instance, someone falling $100 short and someone falling $5,000 short of the poverty line are both considered impoverished, but one is clearly worse off. The measurement also does not account for either near cash or in-kind benefits. Lacking these elements, the measurement is outdated and has not changed except for accounting for inflation since its inception in 1963. Nor does the OPM do a sufficient job of measuring poverty. The same flaws which prevent it from defining poverty correctly, that is, its absolute nature and outdated standards, prevent it from effectively measuring poverty, even though it is used by the U.S. government today. Iceland notes that the amount of food that the OPM deems adequate provides only an emergency rations diet, hardly sufficient or healthy for a family living on this diet daily. To combat some of these problems, Kathleen Short has suggested a definition of poverty based not on a person's pre-taxed income, but his or her income with cash welfare benefits added and non-discretionary expenses subtracted. This measurement, dubbed the Supplemental Poverty Measurement, takes a more relative approach to the issue than does the OPM. However, it still does not provide a solution for defining poverty because it cannot relay to us the depth of poverty. The SPM creates a threshold based on a dollar amount that covers the basic needs of food, clothing, shelter, and utilities, or FCSU. It is created using expenditures of a family of 4 in the 33rd percentile of the U.S. population and multiplying the number by 1.2 to account for additional basic needs. This updated threshold accounts for household expenditures and, unlike the OPM, provides for a more substantial life than the OPM does in its emergency rations allowance. Although it does not do justice to poverty's depth in its definition, the SPM is the best measurement of poverty today. Its quasi-relative approach, which gives an absolute threshold but also accounts for a small amount of extra income, allows us to determine a certain depth of poverty by realizing the number of people receiving benefits and the quantity of those benefits. As Kathleen Short notes in her article defining the SPM, there are many factors that the SPM includes in its definition of income that the OPM does not. From this chart, we can see that medical out-of-pocket expenses would put 3.3% more of the population into poverty. Meanwhile, the benefit of SNAP pulls about 2% of the population out of poverty. Gauging how benefits and non-discretionary expenses impact those in poverty is a major benefit of the SPM. So where is the bridge between a definition based on a broad range of capabilities and a measurement using the SPM which, though quasi-relative, does not account for many of these capabilities? The answer is our government. We believe that the SPM places an accurate numerical value on the income needed to satisfy capabilities that the government does not provide. FCSU goes hand in hand with the bodily health and environmental control capabilities. The additional basic needs provided for in the SPM include allowance for leisure. The capabilities of life and bodily integrity are protected by U.S. law. Senses, imagination and thought, emotions, practical reason, affiliation, and respect for other species are all provided for through the social and educational atmosphere of public schooling. Though it could be argued that capabilities are not entirely provided through the government, a reform in government programs would be needed to provide capabilities not based on income. Measuring the number of impoverished people in the United States with the SPM allows us to enact policy that addresses those who cannot meet their capabilities because of income lowness. The SPM gives a comprehensive, quasi-relative measurement of poverty, and is thus the best way to determine the number of people impoverished in the United States today.